What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure yet again. We got a trailer, about a 2-minute trailer on Caledon University, right? They do a pitch for this college, and while the trailer itself kind of comes across like a Sims DLC pack, I actually kind of like it, right? Because it comes across very opening and welcoming, and it's talking about the highlights and the features of a college, much like you would get from this kind of promotional thing. But then it kind of breaks a little bit, and I like it. I like it a lot. So I wrote down a couple, interesting parts, whether it was what was said to us or what we visually got to see. There's a couple things going on in this trailer that we got to talk about. So the first thing to talk about, right, is they're talking about the first female president, and they're going through, like, the logistics of what's going on in this college. But then you have the narrator that says a couple interesting things. I really want to focus on the first and the third thing that the narrator says. She says, murder mysteries. Now, not a big surprise, although what we actually see is a little interesting, right? But murder mystery, I mean, Safi is killed, and so obviously that makes sense, right? She says murder mystery, and at the third part of it, she says supernatural occurrences. So just something to kind of keep in mind. The supernatural is most probably, most likely, right? Max playing around with time again, going into the alternate realities, but it doesn't mean that other things can't happen. Now, what you actually see during these things, the first part is Max sneaking downstairs somewhere, and she walks up to what looks to be this desk-like thing with all of these pictures. Now, I saw online on Twitter, a lot of people are saying the dark room. I personally don't think it is the dark room, and I just don't see it. You have all those pictures there, but I don't know, does it look like the dark room from episodes 4 and 5 of Life is Strange? I know the pictures, I know it literally is dark down there, but I don't know. I don't know if that is something where she's kind of going through it, right? Going through some PTSD stuff, some trauma stuff. But again, I feel it's because when they say, I think you have to attach it, right? They say murder mystery, and she's going down and she's looking at this thing with all of these pictures. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. Of course, any of these points I want to hear from you guys in the comments, but I just felt that to be kind of interesting. When they say the supernatural occurrences, the phone, you get one quick look at who she's talking to, and it's this character called Maria. Now, I'm actually currently playing Life is Strange right now. I don't recall a Maria, even when you look to Stella and Juliet and all of these kind of side characters, right? Whether it's Victoria's gang or not Victoria's gang, nobody named Maria, so it must be a new character in this game, but that's who she's talking to when she seemingly is startled and turns around, drops the phone, and it's the police, do not cross sign behind her. And again, that's when they say supernatural. And that's another reason why I say the supernatural part. Is it most likely her powers that's supernatural? Yes. Could it be something else? Are we dealing with ghosts here? I mean, the fact that she can maybe see people and interact with people in alternate realities, is that supernatural? Can that kind of blend or bleed into being ghosts, right? So just something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so next part is where they talk about the art location, art district, let's say, in the college. And the interesting thing, there's a couple interesting parts with this. Number one, you get Max Caulfield walking with ghosts, and it goes over her history. It doesn't get, they don't mention Blackwell. They don't go into all that stuff. But it does say, she's the artist in residence there. And then you get the picture, right? Her part to the college, or her gift to the college. And, the bottom is the roots, and the roots are kind of all branching out, right? So I wonder if that is kind of a wink, wink, nod, nod in terms of different ways things can happen, right? The top one, I don't know. I mean, to me, the first thing I look at, or the first thing I see, is a car. But now that I'm looking at it again, maybe it looks like a volcano of some sort. You see some sort of smoke type thing on the right side. I don't know what that's supposed to represent. I do imagine the roots branching out in the bottom is some sort of link to, butterfly effect, things kind of branching out. And then the other cool part to this is when Max is walking up to a wall, you see the meeting tomorrow sign on the left, but the picture itself is whales. Now, I don't think it's the Two Whales Diner, but I mean, it's just, I think, again, an interesting wink, wink, nod, nod to the Two Whales Diner, right? Now, I want to skip quite a bit because a lot of the stuff happens right at the end, but I do find it interesting that when they're going through, the art, right? So the art connected to Max, with photography and all that jazz. So they mention science, and they go through the observatory, and they talk about the stars, and and that's something that, again, I don't really know which direction they're going to go with, but seeing in the first game as not just the tornado coming, but it's messing, it's snowing, and you see like the eclipse with like kind of the double moon, right? Like a lot of this stuff is messing with the environment. Whales are dead and they're, washed up on the shore and all that stuff. So I do just find it interesting. And they mention stars. Like they mentioned stars a few times actually just in this video, and specifically in this science section. Max, when she's taking the picture of the stars and of the sky, is when this seemingly starts, right? You think to that first gameplay. Then she takes a picture of the owl, and that's kind of part 2. But the first part is like taking a picture of the sky. So just something, again, I don't really know which direction it's going to go. I imagine it's going to be somewhat similar, where like events are going to take place. That's the more detective side, the more murder mystery side, but it's also going to start to affect the environment and do something similar. We've talked about what do they do this time. They did the tornado, hurricane type thing in the last one. What do you do for this one? And that's something that I don't know if they're going to talk about, before we actually get it. Okay, now we get to the part where they talk about mysteries and like solving, these glyphs and so, solving these weird things. And they talk about finding or figuring out the mystery of basically the college's founder, right? I don't know how deep that'll get. I wonder, right? Like, is that really integral to it? Is it kind of a side thing? But the interesting thing to look at is when they literally circle the picture, right? And then they put like an arrow to it. You look to the right and look. Could that person be somebody who's like drinking or something, right? Like, could it be something that's not what we think it is? Yes, that's possible. But they're hunched over and they have something kind of like sticking out of their midsection that looks very, very much, let's just say like a weapon for YouTube purposes. But it looks exactly like when Chloe shoots herself in episode 2 of Life is Strange. I mean, like, I can't get out of my head. I saw it on Twitter. I saw the actual thing itself. Like, it's very hard to miss. I guess you're supposed to look at the circle being drawn, but if you literally just look to the right, there's that happening. Now, I don't know. Like, I want to go crazy and say, okay, is this Max like hallucinating? Is it things like that? She seems like, I don't know, the rest of the frame doesn't look like anything's happening. She also seems to be like in the original universe, right? Maybe not, but I think there's kind of signs to show when she kind of transfers over. I don't know. Again, I feel like in terms of the finding the founder thing, right? That just depends on how deep they want to go in that. But like, who is that person? I don't want to get too crazy, but it's like, it looks just like Chloe when she's hunched over, panicking after she shoots herself. And it's like, how do you not, see the kind of, similarities to that? So maybe they just did that as like a gentle, like an Easter egg, I guess, right? Nothing too serious. But yet again, like, what is that? Like, we have to figure out what that actually is in the game. Okay, then we get to the absolute madness. A lot happens in the last, maybe like 12 seconds, of this trailer. So the narrator talks about, Caledon, where nothing bad ever happens, right? And then the music starts getting trippy and you get a lot of quick cuts. So the first one that I actually first saw, circulating on Twitter first, but I actually found like the perfect frame, to pause it. You get like the in-game menu, journal, phone, collectibles, and you see these sketches. And I mean, number one, Max is a talented artist. We knew that if you looked at the journal of her in 1. I mean, she draws some amazing stuff. But oh my God, not again, not again, not again. You see things on fire. I mean, like, it's reminiscent of a little bit of like Before the Storm type artwork mixed with very like Max is going through it, right? So it's just interesting. And I think this is more of like the PTSD and the trauma that she's going to, go through. It's also important to note this guy, and I don't know if we've ever found out his name or like what he's doing, but he's in several frames of this last 10, 12 seconds. He's in a couple of these, and we don't really know who he is. Maybe he seems like a Mark Jefferson type. He kind of looks to be like a Mark Jefferson type. Doesn't mean he's the killer, right? It's just something to kind of keep in mind, but they definitely throw him at us quite a bit in this last little part. Another frame I want to focus on is Max kind of ducking, right? She's holding her head, and you can look at the left, like something's clearly blowing up, right? I imagine, again, it's a weapon, let's say, that shoots. You see later on somebody holding that weapon up to her. I think we've seen that before, though. We also see a little thing from her mom and dad, which is really cool. They're really cool messages to be looked at in Life is Strange. Like, they go back and forth, and both of them, are pretty different, in how they talk to Max and how Max talks, back to them. But we see one, Max, we can't wait for you to come home this summer. We're sure Blackwell Academy is great and all, but we miss you. So this must be a far, like a far out text from years and years. I mean, I don't know if we know her age, but I'm still going to assume, because of the first original leak that was kind of pulled the day that this game, I think, was announced. She's 28, and this was like 10 years after Life is Strange. I'm going to still believe that until we hear differently. So this has got to be years and years ago, right? But from her mom and dad, and again, more of like the menu screen, tasks, messages, crosstalk, and notes. And then maybe the most interesting one, again, considering I've just recently, like I've played Life is Strange 4 or 5 times at this point, but I'm replaying it. I'm on episode 5, so I just did 4. And 4 has the thing with the sky and the moons, right? And the kind of eclipse situation. But the closer thing to say, or the better thing to say, is the end of the world. In episode 4 of Life is Strange 1, again, all of this environmental things, right, have already started to happen. The snow, the animals dying, and all that stuff. And then you start to see it really represented in the sky. They look up there before they do the Vortex Club party, the end of the world party, right? Very ominous. Like, it's already after you find out Rachel is dead and you're going after Nathan, like that whole thing, right? You see it again here. So that's just very interesting to me that I think, again, whatever the environmental effect is going to be, she's impacting something once again with her powers that is going to the signals and the themes of this being the end of the world. It's why I'm very picky that she better be using these powers for the right reason. She knows what these powers do. She knows that certain things really shouldn't be undone, especially if you don't save Chloe at the end, right? Like if you save Arcadia Bay at the end, like the Chloe thing, that becomes a theme. That becomes a theme of you're cheating death. Like the entire 5 episodes of Life is Strange, right? Chloe dies again. And you're cheating it every single time. And then she would die. Again, depends on the ending. But also, you have other like examples and occurrences that should show Max to not use those powers. The powers are a danger, and I mean maybe they can be used for a right quote unquote reason, but they have major repercussions. Unless you want to get down like the Rachel angle, and maybe Rachel is the storm, hence before the storm, hence all of the themes and the imagery and all that stuff. That could be as well, but I feel like you kind of go down a rabbit hole that probably this game is not going to explore. But it would explore Max doing powers affects things. And so I've always been very picky that I think Max needs to be using these powers for the right reason. I think she should almost be forced into doing it, not on her own will, basically against her own will, right? Because she knows that things like this will happen if she messes with time. And although she's messing with time in a different way, she's still messing with time. So I've always been very picky on that, and this might be another, kind of reason why. The only other frame I really want to focus on, because they show Moses and they show all these other pictures, but there's one where it's definitely Max, right? Because she's got the rings on the 2 fingers, right? So it seems like it's her. And she's got blood on her finger. Now, originally I thought, is that like a paper cut? And it's like, well, why would you show a paper cut? I'm going to assume, although it could be like you might be able to see a cut there, I'm going to assume that's blood because of her nose. I'm going to assume that they're going to continue with the themes and just the literal occurrences that they did in the first game, where when she overdoes it, her nose starts to bleed, right? And so this is, I assume, this is her overdoing it, and then her nose bleeds. She puts her, maybe for the first time, right? Obviously, if it happens later, it's not as big of a deal, or she knows, but the very first time, whenever she pushes it too far, she's going to feel whatever, she's going to put her hand to her nose, and then there's going to be blood there, and she'll know that her nose is bleeding. So that's what I imagine that one is. And by the way, during this spasm, I mean, they show a clock, they show a couple other things. They also show those pictures again of what people think is the dark room. So just kind of wanted to throw that in, that I'm going to lean still more towards the first time, because the first time that you see it, they're talking about murder mystery. It's also not spastic, what's going on. Right now it's, okay, we're just going to jump and show you 30 different pictures. But that same frame, when she's standing there and all the pictures are in front of her in this dark underground place, is there. So maybe it's maybe it is, but maybe it's also not. So I think that's all I wanted to go over. Hopefully you guys liked this style of video. If there's anything else like this, Life is Strange, we will definitely continue to do it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I do theories and all this kind of stuff for Life is Strange all the time on the channel, so stay tuned for more on Double Exposure. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.